Kojo Mensah, a skilled carpenter, has struggled for years to make ends meet. No one in his community values his handcrafted furniture, and debt starts piling up. One day, he attends a funeral and notices the expensive, beautifully designed casket being lowered into the ground. An idea sparks people die every day, but no one stops buying coffins. Desperate for a better life, he starts crafting high-quality caskets. At first, business is slow fear associating with death, but when a respected chief buys one for a family member, Kojo's business flourishes. Soon, his caskets are in high demand across the region. He gains wealth, buys land, and becomes a respected man. However, trouble begins when strange things start happening. He hears whispers at night from the caskets in his workshop. Tools go missing. His mother, Auntie Abena, warns him. The dead don't like their homes being made for profit. Kojo dismisses her fears. Then, his best friend Kwesi suddenly dies in a mysterious accident, and Kojo is the one who makes his casket. Grief-stricken, Kojo buries him, but begins seeing Kwesi in his dreams, warning him to stop. One night, an old man visits Kojo's workshop. He tells him that some souls resist burial, and that not all deaths are natural. Kojo ignores him. That same night, his workshop burns down mysteriously. In the ashes, he finds an untouched, completed casket, the last one he ever made. Inside, he sees something that makes his blood run cold. His own name carved inside. From that moment, Kojo is never seen again. Some say he fled. Others say the spirits took him as payment. But one thing is clear: his casket business brought him wealth, but also his doom. Kojo Mensah stood frozen, his breath shallow as he traced his trembling fingers over the name carved inside the casket. The letters were deep, precise almost, as if the wood itself had grown them rather than being carved by human hands. The air around him felt heavy, thick with something unseen. A gust of wind rushed through the ruined workshop, kicking up ash and sending a shiver down his spine. Then a whisper, low and chilling. "Kojo, time is short." His heart pounded. He spun around, expecting to see someone in the shadows. No one. The workshop was empty, save for the casket bearing his name. Then the casket lid creaked open by itself. Kojo stumbled backward, his breath caught in his throat. Inside the coffin, beneath the carved letters of his name, something shimmered, something dark. The surface of the wood seemed to ripple like water, and a faint reflection of himself looked back at him. Except the eyes staring at him weren't his own. They were hollow. Kojo staggered out of the workshop, nearly tripping over the debris. He ran blindly through the night, his mind racing. This isn't real. This isn't real. But deep down, he knew it was. The next morning, the village was buzzing with rumors. A fire that only burned the workshop, yet left one casket untouched. A man who vanished into the night? Even Chief Nana Kwame, who had once praised Kojo's craftsmanship, was uneasy. He gathered the village elders. "This is no ordinary fire," he said, stroking his grey beard. "There's something more to this. Someone must seek the truth before we all suffer." Auntie Abena, Kojo's mother, sat outside her home, weeping. She had warned him, but he had not listened. Now, she feared the spirits had taken her son. Just as the elders were deciding what to do, a young boy ran into the gathering, panting. "I saw him," the boy cried. "I saw Kojo." The villagers turned to him, wide-eyed. "Where?" the chief demanded. The boy hesitated, shuffling his feet. At the old cemetery. He was standing near an open grave. He looked strange. A cold hush fell over the crowd. No one had dared go near that cemetery in years. It was a place of forgotten burials, a place where restless souls were said to wander. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. Then Chief Nanakwame rose to his feet. "Gather the men. We go at once." Meanwhile, deep in the cemetery, Kojo stood motionless, staring at the open grave before him. His own reflection still haunted his mind. The whispering voices had not stopped. And now, standing before the empty grave, he knew. It was waiting for him. Kojo's feet felt heavy, as if unseen hands gripped his ankles, rooting him to the ground. The open grave before him yawned like a hungry mouth, waiting, expectant. The whispers around him grew louder. This time he could make out distinct voices. "Kojo Mensa, you have taken too much. You must pay." He squeezed his eyes shut, shaking his head violently. "No, I did nothing wrong," he yelled into the cold night air. "I only made caskets. I never harmed anyone." But the whispers did not stop. Instead, they turned into laughter low, echoing, inhuman. Then, the ground beneath him trembled. The loose dirt around the grave shifted, spilling into the dark hole. Something moved inside. Kojo took a shaky step back, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He turned to run, but standing behind him was Kwesi, his childhood friend, his business partner, his first cursed customer. But Kwesi was not as Kojo remembered him. His eyes were sunken, his skin an unnatural grey. The clothes he had been buried in were torn and covered in dirt. His lips barely moved, but his voice was clear. "You should have stopped, Kojo." Kojo staggered backward, his heart hammering. "Kwesi, too buried you." Kwesi took a slow step forward. "Yes, you buried me in one of your caskets." His cold, lifeless fingers twitched. "And now it's your turn." Kojo spun around and ran, his legs pounding against the uneven ground. The whispers turned into wails, howls of unseen spirits chasing after him. His breath came in short, sharp bursts, but he did not stop. He could not stop. Meanwhile, in the village, Chief Nanakwame and the group of men moved cautiously toward the cemetery, their torches flickering in the night wind. The eerie silence of the graveyard unsettled even the bravest among them. Auntie Abina, gripping a bundle of protective charms, whispered prayers under her breath. Then they heard it, screaming. It was coming from the cemetery. "Kojo!" his mother cried, trying to rush forward, but the chief held her back. "Wait!" he commanded. "We must not go blindly." The ground beneath them quivered. A dark mist curled around the tombstones, slithering like living shadows. The men exchanged terrified glances. "What evil is this?" one of them muttered. Then a figure burst out from the darkness, running straight at them. Kojo. His face was wild with fear, his clothes torn, his arms flailing as he ran like a man chased by death itself. "Help me!" he screamed. "He's coming! They're coming!" The men barely had time to react before a gust of wind blew out their torches, plunging the cemetery into absolute darkness. And in that darkness, something moved. The wind howled through the cemetery, snuffing out the torches as the villagers stood frozen in fear. The shadows around them shifted, moving unnaturally, and in the distance, Kojo's screams rang through the night. Chief Nanakwame gripped his staff tightly. "Light the torches again," he commanded. The men fumbled with their flints, but the darkness clung to them like a living thing. Then, from the mist, Kwesi emerged, his lifeless eyes locked onto Kojo, who had fallen to his knees, sobbing. "It's too late," Kwesi's hollow voice echoed. "You should have listened." Auntie Abena rushed forward, despite the chief's warnings, clutching her charms. She knelt beside her son and cried, "Kojo, you must repent!" Kojo trembled. "Tu didn't mean for this to happen. I only wanted to escape poverty." "Death is not for profit," the old chief muttered grimly. "You ignored the warnings. Now, the spirits have come for payment." The ground beneath Kojo cracked. The grave behind him gaped wider, a cold force pulling at him. He clawed at the dirt, but invisible hands dragged him toward the hole. "Mother, help me!" Auntie Abena wept. The villagers chanted prayers, but the spirits had made their decision. With one final chilling scream, Kojo Mensa was swallowed into the grave. The wind stopped, the shadows receded, the air grew still. When the villagers relit their torches, the cemetery was silent. No sign of Kojo, no sign of Kwesi. Only an unmarked grave where Kojo had once stood. Auntie Abena collapsed in grief. The chief shook his head. "Let this be a warning to us all." And with heavy hearts, the villagers left the cemetery, never speaking of Kojo Mensa again. Moral lessons. 1. Greed can lead to destruction. Kojo prioritized wealth over wisdom, ignoring the warnings of his mother and the spirits. The Bible warns against this in 1 Timothy 6:10. "For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows." Kojo Mensa learned too late that some things should never be traded for profit. His tale remains a warning. Not all riches bring blessings, some bring curses.